We just react. And we make a lot of money if we get it right. And we get left by the side of the road if we get it wrong. And there have always been, and there always will be, the same percentage of winners and losers.
Well said. Praj, Derrick, Graham, Alaaddin, and Jacob led the engineering efforts this summer required to create a scalable, extensible, Chromium browser agnostic web application. To put it simply, Desync is a real-time open source chat application that's designed to connect users in the simplest and most direct ways possible. It's designed with extensibility in mind so that contributors can mold Desync to their vision. The key features of Desync include direct messaging, a fully fledged notification system, a live member list display, and emoji support. Now we'll hear from the engineers about their efforts over the last 3 months.
My name is Praj Iyer, and I will be talking about what I did for our project. So my initial focus was playing a strong part in defining our project architecture, our development process, and our tech stack. So I kind of helped to define all the moving parts for our application to fulfill its function, as well as defining what technology should be used to fulfill those moving parts. I then moved on to helping with the UI design, especially to do with notifications and the user panel. So, here's a mock-up from an early Figma that we had. Here's like our user panel, and here's the notifications page. And then I owned the real-time notification system, both the front and back end logic, as well as migrating the user status from using Firestore to using a real-time database, so that it would actually be real-time, because we were having a lot of issues with that. And I also focused a lot on front end, so like UI improvements on the code base, like getting rid of orphaned components as things improved, stale CSS, and deduplicating code to enforce style as well as maintainability. And I also fixed back end logic and improved it, as well as type structure implementations, just to kind of make things easier for myself as I needed. And I also did smaller things such as consolidating the UI, like getting rid of old buttons, moving stuff around, and cleaning up stuff that I didn't think was necessary. And I did some other small stuff such as implementing user highlighting. So here's real-time status, here's the notifications page, and here's the panel that I implemented. Major technologies that I used included React for the front end, and Tailwind CSS for styling, JavaScript and TypeScript, and Google's backend Firebase platform, especially to do with storage. And my general approach for development was researching, then prototyping, then building, and then testing, and finally revising, kind of following the traditional SDLC. And what really helped was working with teammates and collaborating with them. The original plan that we had come up with was to kind of develop based on team role, but we found that features were really overlapping, so development became feature and ticket focused, and we had to adapt to that, but I think we did well with that. I had to learn a completely new backend like cloud platform, which was Google Firebase. That was challenging, but the documentation and talking with my teammates really helped with that. And I was also used to state management on the back end, which was kind of like more traditional, but learning state management on the front end was really new and really interesting to me. And what really helped with those challenges was kind of researching stuff on my own, as well as just talking with my teammates, and a lot of late nights iterating on some potential approaches and deciding what was the best. And my giant takeaways were that teamwork definitely makes the dream work, and clear communication and ownership are really key to success. So now I'll be switching to a little demo of what I did. So we're going to do a really quick demo of the notification system. So on the left and right, I have two different users. So I'm going to send a message in the general chat, and we immediately see message notifications pop up. We have three categories of notifications. So this was a server message, so it's going to show the latest server message. And if we click that, it redirects and highlights. And then this was also a mention message. So if I click that, it highlights to that. And if I send a DM to the user, then we see a notification appear, and if we go to the page, it's a direct message, so if we click that, it redirects and highlights to that message.
Hi, this is Derrick Priebe. I'm going to talk about my portion of the project. Some of the main things I contributed was work on the style guide, and also creating the initial chat UI and layout in adherence to the style guide, as well as the UI for the authentication and registration, adhering to the style guide as well. And then also extending that into a compressed mobile view. So some of the major technologies, there's a bunch, but just highlighting the main ones that I worked on, focusing on the front end, React, Tailwind for styling, and TypeScript for type safety. Steps in development. Overall, we used agile development, and we kind of did like a baseline backend, I worked on a baseline front end a lot, and then from there, our team overall was able to kind of move forward on features, implementing some of the more complex features. Our original plan was kind of to split feature build between front end and back end, but there ended up being a lot of overlap. So typically, someone kind of ended up taking the lead on one feature or another. Challenges for me was just learning a new back end with Google Cloud, and I just overcame that by looking at the documentation available, essentially. And kind of what I learned from the project is just that, a team can accomplish a lot together, and we can accomplish a lot and still have fun doing it. Also, just wanted to show what the site looks like. This is the login page, registration page, adhering to the main UI concepts. I'm going to go ahead and log in, show the chat, adhering to our blue exploration UI, keeping theme fairly dark, and kind of showing how mobile works, compressing the screen. Shows the user bar in the bottom left here, and you can toggle the bars that were hidden, that channel bar and then the user bar toggles there on mobile. And that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Graham. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hi everybody, my name is Graham Rees, and my role in the Desync project was focused on back-end engineering and DevOps. I started by setting up the initial development environment and standing up the Google Cloud services that we decided to use for our project. During development, a major focus of mine was enabling Firebase authentication to support secure user login, and within our web client, I created the auth context and protected route components to both track the user authentication state and then to enforce that authentication state, make sure that only authenticated users view our app. On the back end, I deployed the Firestore and real-time database rules, and these rules enforce access control at the data level, making sure that only authenticated users could read and write where it was appropriate. Our development process focused on research and prototyping first, pretty heavy on the front end using Firebase Studio with Gemini, and that determined what tech stack we wanted to use. And then once we were set up and good to go with the tech stack, we had a CI/CD pipeline that to make sure that we were having every commit be a functional app that was deployed to our Firebase setup. The original plan was to build a separate web API backend and connect it to a front-end client, but as we went through that prototyping phase, we determined that standing up all of these Firebase out-of-the-box services on our own would have been a lot of extra time, and so we avoided that. Throughout the project, we used Discord and GitHub for collaboration and leaned on the Firebase software development kit to integrate core features so that we were able to produce on our own machines the access to the web app so that we could develop and prototype as we went throughout the project. And one of the major challenges that we faced was our database rules sometimes blocking feature development. So one of the ways that we overcame that is we would temporarily set the rules wide open, and then once the feature was developed, we would whitelist data access just to that feature. From this project, I learned really collaboration is key and design documentation is best, and that's what really gets us all literally on the same page. And to make sure that we're sequencing our development so that earlier development is removing blockers from future development, not trying to co-develop too much, try to make sure that we're going in a logical sequence. Thank you.
My name's Alaaddin, and I focused my time on the front-end development and pipeline support. To this end, I primarily use TypeScript with React, and then I had the opportunity to write a little bit of YAML when writing the GitHub Actions CI script. React TypeScript was the easy choice for our group just because of how ubiquitous it is in the world of front-end as well as within our group. Most of us have experience with it, which made this a no-brainer. Initially, for this project, I focused on creating a mock-up for our front end. I quickly transitioned into creating direct messages components alongside Derrick's group messages components. Um, After this work effort was done and I ended up merging some broken code, I decided to add Git hooks to enforce local build validation prior to committing code. And then in tandem, I introduced a CI script, which performs a full build during a PR prior to merging that PR into the main branch. And this was done with strict type checks to try and prevent runtime errors, mostly just prevent build errors. So make sure that, hopefully our site builds. After I felt confident I wouldn't introduce belligerently broken code anymore, I focused on the addition of emojis to the direct messages. Derrick's work on group messages and the front end in general really made this possible and easy to integrate, across the whole app. So it was easy for both direct and group messages. Finally, I focused on scrolling, which enables users to see the entire group chat's message history as well as the entire direct message history they have with another user. And this really was, all of this work was within the scope of the original plan. There were not really any deviations. There was one story that I was not able to complete, which was about adding unit tests for the UI. Challenges that I faced were primarily around working with TypeScript and getting familiar with this stack. My mix of unfamiliarity, along with a lack of caution, caused our site to break early on. And then in order to overcome those challenges, I spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how to prevent something like that from happening again. So that's when I put the CI script together in order to catch broken builds before they get deployed. Overall, my biggest takeaway was that build automation is super important and I think should be one of the first things done in a new repository. Certainly not overlooked. Okay, thanks for listening.
Hey there, my name is Jacob Pham, and you've heard from my teammates already. So yeah, when I started this project, I only really knew about AWS microservices, and Firestore was a foreign word to me. But by the end of it, I realized it was just Google's versions of different tools like DynamoDB, etc. Both have hundreds of services, and it was cool to learn about them all. So my role in this project ended up being focusing on backend real-time messaging, keeping track of who's online, saving message history, of course, in pair with some of the front-end folks that enhance those features, but making sure chats don't disappear, right? And so that was one of my first things I did, right? Like, so when you type a message, it used to not stay after you refresh the page. And that was one of the things I worked on, which was simple as going into the collections. There we go. Yeah, and making these collections persistent between sessions and calling that. And so in some of the actual code I can show, like the actual send message or sending it to the collection right here. Yeah, and then secrets manager was another big thing, kind of just jumping right into that, was getting all of the secrets to be properly set up. So you can see here, one of the big things was dealing with a lot of build failures initially. This is further back in the history. If you go to the front, we've got things working, all these nice green check marks. But originally there was a lot of failures, and that was, if you click on one, you can see the logs. And a lot of them were related to the secrets not being called correctly. And not to jump right to the solution, but I guess basically the service account Firebase app hosting compute needed to have permission to those secrets. And so that was something that in local testing, you have those environment variables and then a .env file locally, and they can just open and access them. But the deployment app needs to have access to open them and look at them. And yeah, so I learned a little bit about like IAM permissions for Google Cloud. And Google Cloud, as you can see, has a ton of tools. So coming back to my slide here, yep, worked with Firebase a lot and just Google services in general. Worked a lot with the database and sending and receiving. Got some minimal viable front end stuff with React. And yeah, the challenges there were those deployments and secrets and different permissions that I learned about Google Cloud. And yeah, that's pretty much it. To be very brief about the project, learned a lot. It was very cool. And I guess I'll end with an honorary mention to showing the app one more time. That's all. Thank you.
So, what's next? Well, first things first, once the term has concluded, the Desync repository is going to be made public with an MIT license to encourage other developers to contribute. With any luck, contributions will include some of the work that our team was looking to complete, but we just didn't have the time for, which includes MFA, servers with private and public channels, role-based access control, custom emojis, and then native clients for desktop and mobile platforms. I think this short clip from the sequel to Good Will Hunting adequately captures the essence of what our team has accomplished this summer. Thank you.